You can pause this video, check a message, grab a drink, and come back to it later. Your day will barely notice that small distraction. In a Napoleonic gun crew, that same moment of drifting attention is dangerous. One unfocused second when you are holding a powder bag or standing near a loaded barrel can cost you fingers, hearing, or the life of the person next to you. How does the little freedom you use every day without thinking turn into a risk that tightens your chest the moment you step into an artillery position? We talk about Napoleonic guns as if they belong to paintings and museums. We imagine shining brass barrels, smart uniforms, plumes on shakos, and officers with polished swords. It looks ceremonial, almost theatrical. But for the soldier in the gun crew, this world is not a painting. It is noise, smoke, orders, heavy labor, and constant fear of making the wrong move. You flinch when you hear a car backfire. He lives between explosions that are not mistakes in the soundtrack, but the central rhythm of his life. You automatically reach for your phone when you feel bored or tired. You scroll, you switch, you ignore the background. In the battery position, there is no background. Every sound, every shout, every movement of a horse or officer can mean that the gun must be moved, loaded, fired, or abandoned. The habit that protects you from boredom today, to drift away for a moment, would make you dangerous to your own crew then. And if you are dangerous to your crew, the Army has a very simple answer. Either you learn or you disappear. By the end of this story, you will see 3 systemic reasons why you would not last even a single day in a Napoleonic gun crew. The point is not that you are softer or weaker than those men. The point is that the whole system around the gun is built to squeeze, to grind, and to ignore individual limits in a way that modern life very rarely does. If you stay with this until the last paragraphs, you will understand not only почему этот день почти невыносим, but also why your own stressful day is supported by invisible structures that those gunners could только мечтать иметь. So, where are we exactly? We are in continental Europe in the early 19th century, in the years of the Napoleonic Wars. Formal dates matter to historians. The soldier in the gun crew lives by another calendar. His units of time are reveille, roll call, drill, loading, firing, and, если повезет, a few hours of sleep before the next round of orders. The Army uses the Gregorian calendar. Officers write neat dates in their reports, but the man on the gun remembers days as the march through the rain, the day the wheel broke, the morning when the caisson exploded. Our point of view is not that of a dashing officer or a famous general. The hero is an ordinary artilleryman, probably born in a village or small town, used to hard work with his hands long before the Army took him. He may barely read. Numbers and letters are not his tools. His tools are the rammer, the sponge, the hand spike, the drag rope, the powder bag, and the round shot. His world is the rough inside of a leather glove, the weight of metal on his shoulder, the taste of stale bread, the smell of damp wool and black powder. The rules around him are simple and harsh. The gun is property of the state. He is closer to caretaker than owner of anything. For losing or damaging equipment, there are punishments. For disobedience, there are punishments. For cowardice, or what officers call cowardice, there can be death in front of the assembled troops. Medicine is crude and scarce. Law is fast and public. Climate and landscape do not care if he is tired, ill, or injured. And even if he survives the campaign, society is not preparing a comfortable return for him. You watch this video with the luxury of choosing how deeply to imagine his day. He does not choose how deeply the day will enter his bones. To feel that difference, let us walk through the invisible structure of his life, what he eats and drinks, где он спит, как он работает, как его лечат, как наказывают, чем он дышит, на что он живет и какое место занимает в своем обществе. Он ли тогда станет понятным, почему один день рядом с пушкой – это почти предел? First, food and water. You turn the tap and expect drinkable water. You may complain about taste or hardness, but you trust that it will not make you ill. For the artilleryman, water is a daily gamble. The battery rarely stays long at a comfortable well. On the march, water comes from rivers, ponds, roadside wells, or hastily dug pits that fill with whatever seepage the soil offers. Clear water is a blessing, not a standard. Cloudy, muddy, suspicious water is very common. He fills his canteen anyway because thirst hurts faster than fear of disease. He does not carry a filter, disinfection tablets, or even firm knowledge of microbes. He knows other things. He knows that after some sources his stomach cramps, his head spins, and fever can follow. He learns to judge water by color and smell, by how locals treat it, by experience passed from older soldiers. But there are days when there is no choice. The column must keep moving, the battery must reach its position, and men drink whatever they can scoop, telling themselves that it will be good enough for now. Food offers little consolation. The state promises rations. Reality delivers what can be transported, stored, and not stolen on the way. Bread and some form of porridge or stew are the backbone of his diet. The bread may be underbaked inside or like a piece of wood outside. It is often dark, dense, and made from grain of inconsistent quality. He eats it anyway, quickly, standing, with one eye on the sergeant. Meat appears more rarely and often connected to uncomfortable truths. An animal slaughtered because it can no longer pull. A village household stripped because the army has priority. Modern people are used to the idea of snacks, of eating a little whenever they feel tired or annoyed, of choosing between different tastes. The artilleryman knows only two states. You have food and eat it now, or you do not, and hope tomorrow is better. Keeping a piece for later is possible, but there is always the risk that a hungry comrade or a thief will simply take it. Hunger is not abstract. It makes hands shake when lifting shot, makes knees weak when pushing the carriage, makes anger flare at the smallest irritation. But orders do not wait for full stomachs. Sometimes months pass with the same basic taste in his mouth: smoke, stale bread, watered wine, or rough spirits when they are available. Fresh fruit, vegetables, sweets are not part of his ordinary military life. They are memories from home or rare gifts from civilians who still dare to approach the troops. Your modern habit of choosing a diet, avoiding some products, preferring others, appears here almost laughably luxurious. His diet is whatever the supply train has not lost, wasted, or sold. And that means that the next question is simple and ruthless. If food and drink barely keep him on his feet, what kind of shelter and warmth can he hope for when he tries to rest? Housing and warmth in a Napoleonic gun crew are not about comfort. They are about which layer lies between your skin and the air when you finally stop moving. You measure cold in degrees Celsius. He measures cold in how fast numbness crawls from fingertips to wrist while he holds a tool. In summer, the battery may sleep under open sky, rolled into cloaks, with only the stars and the buzzing of insects above. In other seasons, there may be tents, barns, sheds, church porches, abandoned houses, or simply a ditch shaped just enough to hide a man from the worst of the wind. In a tent, life is only slightly easier. The canvas is thin, the seams leak, the ground beneath is rarely dry. Straw or hay can be spread to make a kind of mattress, but they quickly mix with mud and vermin. Bodies are packed tight. Privacy does not exist. You hear how others turn in sleep, mutter, grind their teeth. You smell unwashed wool, leather, smoke, sweat. All of this mixes into a stubborn odor that no fresh breeze ever quite removes. Going outside at night to relieve yourself means stepping into cold mud, possibly rain, and the uncertain darkness of a camp that never fully sleeps. In makeshift quarters like barns or peasant houses, The soldier must remember that he is a guest at the edge of force. Civilians may offer space because they fear the army, not because they welcome it. His presence on their floor means their own families squeeze tighter. Their children watch him with suspicion or frightened curiosity. The room is crowded, so he lies where they tell him, boots near his head, someone's elbow near his ribs, with rifles or equipment within arm's reach, because theft is a constant possibility even among comrades. Winter changes the meaning of everything. Then warmth becomes a daily negotiation. Wood must be found or requisitioned. Fires must be placed so that they heat as many as possible without attracting enemy attention at the wrong moment. Clothing gets wet and then never fully dries. Wool retains some warmth when damp, but the sensation of always wearing something that smells of old smoke and rain is grim. He may wake up more tired than when he lay down, simply because his body spent the night fighting cold. The same cloak or coat that barely kept him alive at night does not magically become fresh and light in the morning. It stays with him, heavy, steaming, and he drags it with him as the day's work begins. That same damp coat follows him back to the gun, and with it he walks straight into the rhythm of labor and routine that defines his hours. Labor and routine in an artillery crew have nothing romantic about them. You might think of the gun as a powerful symbol, a dramatic centerpiece in paintings. He knows it as a complicated machine that demands constant physical effort and endless repetition. Where you multitask by jumping between apps and screens, his multitasking is between movements, to sponge, to load, to ram, to aim, to fire, to run the gun back into position, to drag ammunition forward. Each of these tasks has a place in a sequence. If one fails, all others collapse into chaos. The day does not have a neat line between work and rest. Reveille can come before sunrise. There is roll call, inspection, perhaps drill. Drilling with the gun means going through the motions without actual firing, learning how to move as a unit, how to keep out of each other's way, how to respond to shouted commands almost before they are finished. The sergeant watches for hesitation. The officer watches the sergeant. Behind them is the specter of punishment for incompetence, because an artillery piece mishandled is not just useless, it is dangerous to everyone nearby. When combat begins, routine changes speed, but not nature. Now the crew repeats the same motions under the stress of danger. Horses strain to bring the gun into position. Men block the wheels, level the carriage, prepare the ammunition. One man, perhaps our hero, holds the sponge and rammer. Another handles the vent and the priming. A third brings the cartridges from the ammunition chest. A fourth handles the elevation and aim under the direction of an officer. They become parts of one living machine whose purpose is to send controlled destruction across the field. There is no protection for his ears. Each shot is a shock that passes through chest and bones. After several volleys, all sounds blur into one continuous roaring background. Commands grow harder to distinguish. The men start reading lips, gestures, habits of their officers. Mistakes are punished by the gun itself. If the sponge does not fully extinguish embers inside the barrel, the next powder load can ignite too early. If the charge is wrong or the wad is placed badly, the shot may fly short, overshoot, or worse, damage the barrel. Every misstep increases the risk of injury. On quieter days, when no enemy appears, the gun still demands work. It must be cleaned, greased, checked. Wheels and axles need attention. Harness must be inspected. The ammunition chests must be kept dry. The soldier does not own his hours. Even when there is no immediate pressure to fire, there is the constant pressure of discipline. There are drills, inspections, errands, guard duties. To sit still, lean on the carriage and stare into distance until someone calls you lazy is a temptation he learns to suppress, because the cost of being seen as lazy is high. By the time the sun goes down, his arms are trembling from lifting, pushing, pulling. His legs ache from standing in awkward positions on uneven ground. His back feels older than it should. For you, the end of a workday can mean a sofa and medicine if something hurts. For him, the end of the day's labor is only the gate into the next sphere, health and medical care, if that word care really applies. When the last round is fired and the order finally comes to cease work, he does not walk into a clinic. He walks into a world where the line between healthy and unfit is brutally simple. Health and medicine in this reality are not a safety net. They are a thin rope, often rotten, stretched over a pit. There is no reliable way to measure temperature. There is no understanding of invisible germs. There are limited tools to prevent infection. The soldier knows his body is wearing down, but until he cannot stand or walk or breathe, what he feels does not count as a medical case in the eyes of the Army. Small injuries accumulate fast. Blisters from the march turn into raw wounds if boots rub against wet skin day after day. Cuts from rough metal edges or wood splinters become angry and swollen when dirt enters them and no proper cleaning happens. Knees and wrists complain after hours of lifting and pushing awkward weights. Smoke irritates the lungs. Constant noise makes hearing worse. None of this stops the day's work. There is no concept of a sick day for aching joints or a minor respiratory infection. When real injuries arrive, they arrive suddenly and without ceremony. A premature explosion near the gun, a splinter of metal, a fall under a wheel, a misjudged step while moving heavy equipment, and the man is on the ground. Fellow soldiers drag him to the rear if they can. He might receive a quick bandage on the spot, something to stop the bleeding or cover the wound. Later, if he is lucky enough to reach a field surgeon alive, the options are painfully limited. Cut, cauterize, or, in very few cases, carefully set and wait. There is no modern anesthesia. There are mixtures of alcohol and plant-based preparations that blunt pain and consciousness a little, but not for long. Surgical instruments are simple and are sometimes cleaned more by habit than by deep understanding of why cleanliness matters. Operations take place in noisy, crowded conditions. The cries of other wounded men are hard to ignore. Some soldiers faint from fear before the knife even touches them. Some stay frighteningly silent, swallowing everything inside because they have been taught that complaining is shameful. Infectious diseases stalk the camp constantly. Dysentery, typhus, tuberculosis, all those quiet killers thrive where people crowd together without proper sanitation. One man's cough slowly becomes a chorus. A fever that might be treated easily in your life becomes a long gamble here. The soldier watches how comrades lose weight, cough more, stop eating, then disappear into graves at the edge of the camp or into mass pits near battlefields. Each disappearance is a reminder that here illness is not an interruption of life. Illness is often the end of it. So he stands in front of a cruel choice. Either he hides his symptoms and keeps working, risking that a minor problem turns into a serious one, or he steps forward and asks for help, risking that this help will be rough, late, or simply unavailable. Whatever he chooses, one thing is certain: the system will not rearrange itself around his needs. Whether he pays with pain now or with something worse later, the question of what happens to him is no longer purely medical. It stands in the shadow of discipline and law. Safety and law in the world of Napoleonic artillery are not abstract words. They are immediate pressures from above and around. You may live in a society where you trust that law can protect you, where you can appeal, complain, hire representation. He lives in a structure where law is a tool of control, not a guarantee of rights. As a soldier, he is bound by military codes that treat disobedience, desertion, and cowardice as crimes. The gun he serves is expensive in money and prestige. It represents the will of the ruler and the technological edge of the Army. Losing this gun to the enemy is not simply a tactical failure, it can be treated as a crime. If he leaves his post without orders, if he runs when others are supposed to stand, if the gun is captured or destroyed due to what officers see as negligence, punishment may be brutal. It can range from flogging to forced labor to execution in front of assembled troops. So his safety does not mean freedom from danger. It means staying within the narrow path that avoids official wrath. Behind him stand officers who can decide his fate with a few strokes of a pen and a few words spoken at the right moment. Their loyalty is to the state and their careers, not to the comfort of one artilleryman. There might be rules on paper about proportional punishment, but he rarely sees those papers. He hears stories instead, about men shot for joining a mutiny, about soldiers who were made examples after desertion, about punishments that left permanent scars. Within the ranks, unofficial dangers also exist. Hierarchies continue among soldiers themselves. Veterans may bully recruits, take better places near the fire, force others to do dirty work. Theft and fights are punished, but only if they cross a line that superiors choose to notice. In many cases, men solve their conflicts in ways that look more like private justice than anything you would call fair. There is no human resources department, no psychological support, no neutral mediator. You might think that at least the promise of order makes things easier, clear rules, clear punishments, clear expectations. But in practice, that order is often unpredictable. The same action might receive different treatment, depending on who witnesses it, what mood an officer is in, or what message needs to be sent to the rest of the unit. The artilleryman learns a tired lesson. Safety does not exist for him as a right. It exists as a temporary privilege when he is useful and invisible when he is broken. It almost feels like the harsh law gives some structure, some reassurance that at least chaos is kept at bay. It seems like having rules should make life more stable and predictable. Yet this appearance of legal order leads us straight into another realm where stability is even more fragile, the environment he lives in and the climate that surrounds him. For the artilleryman, environment and climate are not topics for reports. They are constant opponents. You can choose to stay indoors on a bad air day, to avoid heavy traffic, to visit a park, to get fresh air. He lives in conditions where fresh air is an exception, not a baseline. When the guns fire, the sky above the battery fills with smoke. Black powder produces thick, choking clouds that hover low, especially in calm weather. After a sustained bombardment, you cannot see the horizon clearly. The world shrinks to blurry shapes in gray-brown fog. Every breath carries particles that irritate the throat and lungs. The tongue tastes bitter metal and sulfur. Eyes water and sting. The battery's own fire combines with dust from marching, with smoke from campfires, with the smells of animals and humans crammed together. There are no masks. Wrapping a cloth around the face helps a little, but makes breathing harder. Still, work goes on. The officer cares whether the gun is firing on command, not whether the man at the gun coughs. Weather plays its own cruel games. Heavy rain turns positions into pits of mud. Horses and men slip, wheels sink. Moving the guns becomes a struggle with the earth itself, a tug of war where the mud often wins. Wet ground soaks through shoes and trousers. Fingers lose dexterity. Tools slip from hands numbed by cold water. In winter, cold can freeze fingers to metal if you touch it too long, even through gloves that are already worn thin. In summer, the opposite problem dominates. Heat presses down, sweat runs constantly, and the sun burns any skin left uncovered. The camp itself steadily poisons its own ground. Without organized waste disposal, scraps of food, animal remains, human waste, and broken objects collect around living areas. Flies and other insects flourish. Rats find plenty to eat. The smell thickens into something that does not disperse easily. When the wind carries it into the tents, there is nowhere else to go. Some officers may order the camp to be cleaned, but thorough sanitation is not a priority when every day brings new logistical emergencies. You might say, at least he is outside and not stuck in a factory, imagining that open air somehow compensates. But this outside is not the gentle air of a park with filtered scenarios. It is a cocktail of smoke, dust, extremes of temperature, and waste. If you had the chance to leave such a place for even one afternoon to walk in a modern city park, you would probably feel as if you had entered another planet. Try to imagine yourself taking that walk. Would you instinctively pull your scarf over your nose, close your eyes, seek cleaner air? Would you refuse to stay in a place that stinks and chokes you? Here, refusing is not an option. You remain where the battery is ordered to remain. And when the smoke settles for a while and the wind clears the sky, you might think, at last, this is a small relief. That brief feeling of relief prepares the ground for the next shock. The realization that even when the air feels lighter, your economic and social chains remain just as heavy. Once the smoke thins, he still has to eat, to live, to think about his future, and that drags us directly into the realm of money and social limits, where nearly every path seems closed. His pay is small. It comes in coins, irregularly, through channels that leak. He earns enough to buy only a few small comforts beyond what the Army issues. The amount might look insignificant to you if converted into modern currency, but in his world, those coins can cover, roughly speaking, the cost of a daily bread ration for a poor town dweller of the early 19th century. That is the scale, his monthly work with gun and danger measured against the simplest baseline of survival in civilian life. From this small income, deductions can be made for lost or damaged equipment, for debts, for fines imposed as punishments. Temptations exist too. Alcohol offers oblivion after hard days, but its price eats into already thin finances. A bit of meat bought in a village, a better piece of bread, a service like mending clothes, all nibble away at the fragile pile of coins. Borrowing becomes easy, repaying is hard. Debt in the camp is not just numbers. It can create obligations and tensions that last long after the original sum is forgotten. Social limitations close around him like another uniform, one that fits even tighter than cloth. He is a private soldier. Above him stand corporals, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, majors, colonels, generals. Each rung of this ladder is guarded by education, birth, connections, and money. Stories circulate about soldiers who were promoted from the ranks, who became officers thanks to extraordinary bravery or skill. These stories are rare, almost mythical. For most men, the highest realistic point is to become a non-commissioned officer, if they survive long enough and if their superiors favor them. Officers move in a different social world. They eat better food, drink better drinks, sleep in better quarters. They often bring servants. They can attend salons in cities when the Army passes through, read newspapers, write letters that are more likely to be respected. Their families already belong to a higher layer of society. The artilleryman can see them, hear them, maybe carry their baggage, but he does not join them when they sit down at a table. What happens after the guns fall silent for good? If he survives and is discharged, he returns to a civilian world that may not care much about his past service. There might be some honor in the eyes of neighbors, but there is no organized system to support him if he is disabled, traumatized, or simply too worn to work as hard as before. No pension that guarantees basic living standards, no therapy, no retraining programs. The fields still need to be plowed, workshops still need hands, taxes still need to be paid. If he cannot keep up, poverty waits nearby. His social identity is caught between two conditions. In the Army, he is a replaceable part of a war machine. In civilian life, he He is another mouth to feed in an already fragile economy. The dream that military service will lift him into a more secure status rarely comes true. The pattern of his society is stiff. Mobility exists on paper, but in practice, it prefers those who started near the top. Now imagine him looking at you across time. You have choices that he cannot even define. You can change jobs, move to another city, try a new field of work, return to school, seek help. He cannot. His world offers narrow corridors and walls that resist any attempt to climb. And you, who might sometimes feel as if you have no good options, would understand in his place what a true choice without any good outcome really feels like. We have walked with him through hunger and thirst, through cold and heat, through endless work and risky medicine, through fear of law and stink of camp, through thin pay and heavy class barriers. At the beginning, you met a simple question. Why would your everyday gestures, your normal habits, become almost lethal in a Napoleonic gun crew? It is time to close that loop. The first systemic reason you would not last a day there lies in the relationship between body and environment. Your body has grown used to a world where basic needs are met quietly in the background. Clean water flows when you turn a handle. Food arrives in varied, safe forms. Climate control softens the extremes of weather. Sanitation silently removes waste. The artilleryman's body fights on all those fronts every hour against dirty water, insufficient calories, constant damp or dust, extreme temperatures, and unhygienic surroundings. Your modern strength does not prepare you for that kind of unbroken assault because your systems are not used to being under siege from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep. The second systemic reason sits in the realm of time and choice. You live with the assumption that you can stop. You can say no, call in sick, quit a job, ask for a break, retreat into privacy for at least a few minutes. Many structures protect that assumption: labor laws, cultural norms, economic alternatives. In the gun crew, time does not belong to the soldier. It belongs to the army. Interrupting the sequence of work around the gun is not a private decision, but an act with consequences for the whole unit. The system is engineered so that there is almost never a good moment to step aside, and when you try, you risk punishment or contempt. A single day without the ability to say, "Enough, I need to stop," would shock you more than the noise of the guns. The third systemic reason lies in how the society values and replaces individuals. Modern societies are far from perfect, but in many of them, laws and institutions at least claim that every person has some inherent worth that deserves protection. Compensation, health care, courts, public debates, all these signal that the individual is not just a tool. In the Napoleonic army, the artilleryman is very clearly a resource. He is expensive to train, but easy to replace in the long run. If he falls, another will learn his tasks. The gun is the constant. The men around it are variables. Living even one day in a system that sees you first as fuel and only then as a human being would be emotionally unbearable for someone used to being treated as the main character in their own life. And there is one more insight that hides beneath all these reasons, something we often underestimate today. We take for granted the reliability of infrastructure and the relative predictability of rules. Our water systems, power grids, legal protections, medical networks, labor regulations, even our roads and means of communication, vsi ere skromne skuchne veshi, quietly shield us from the raw edge of chaos that the artillerymen touched every day. Because they work most of the time, they disappear from our attention. The next time you hear a loud noise and feel your shoulders tense, remember that there was a man who could not step away from the source of that noise. The next time you open a tap, breathe clean indoor air, swallow a pill to lower a fever, or send a complaint about working conditions. Think of the soldier at the Napoleonic gun who had none of these options. You would not last a day in his place, not because you are weak, but because your strength has grown in a different soil. His world was constructed to spend people quickly and care very little about those who broke. Yours, with all its flaws and injustices, gives you chances to rest, to heal, to speak, and to change course. If you see that difference clearly, then this journey to the battery position has already done its main job. It has turned one distant picture, a Napoleonic gun surrounded by smoke, into a living reminder of how much silent work stands behind your ability to survive even an ordinary day.